Welcome to the Studio Talk podcast. I'm Xiomara Sosa, your co-host. Every week, we speak to our community members to teach them about mental health through education and awareness, and our hope is to inspire them through social change advocacy. We also interview community members and other mental health professionals, clinicians, healers, students, and wellness professionals. Our style is storytelling. Everyone has a mental health story to tell. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional and is not a substitute for psychological diagnosis or treatment. It's purely educational and purely social change advocacy. If you find yourself in any sort of mental health emergency or distress, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. So welcome everyone to the X Podcast, Real Conversations about Mental Health. This is episode number 49. Number 49.
That's right.
And today's topic is Caregiving Part 3, Financial Caregiving Continued. Because last week you were talking about financial caregiving, and we still have more to say about that. Right. So I am your host, Xiomara Sosa, creator and executive producer of this podcast. Our mission is to educate our communities and listeners about mental health and inspire them through social change advocacy. As a social scientist and social change advocate, I strive to have real conversations on this podcast about all things related to mental health. I am a clinical mental health counselor, a national board certified counselor, a licensed professional counselor, and a clinical supervisor in South Carolina. As a holistic therapist, my approach is inclusive and culturally competent. My counseling specialty is clinical mental health, but my clinical mental health specialties are anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, gender dysphoria, and trauma and stressor-related disorders. My areas of specialization in general are integrative mental health, multicultural counseling and therapy, and women's mental health. As a United States military veteran who served in the Air Force and Army, I celebrate diversity, I honor and promote equity, and I value inclusivity in all communities, especially marginalized communities. I'm the founder and owner and CEO and clinical director of Somerville Women's Mental Health Services, which is now a teaching private practice here in the Low Country of South Carolina. I'm also the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called the X Studio, a mental health cooperative, and it's a place where counseling interns and licensed professional counselor associates, LPCAs, can come to start their journey as the next generation of professional mental health clinicians. So, today I am joined by my co-host again, J-Rock, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. And we have a very special guest that we're going to try to get to talk, right?
All right.
And we're going to let her introduce herself.
Sounds good.
And say why she's here.
That's
All right,
awesome.
J-Rock.
All right, well, I am J-Rock, a co-host, technical advisor to this podcast, and been doing radio, doing broadcasting for about 20 years, and just love all things broadcasting, audio, file, all of that fun stuff. But the thing that I love the most is self-growth, and just big on that. And being a part of this podcast is a big reason for that. And also so many things that I learn every time I'm on, and also a lot of things that I had to unlearn as well, too.
We're going to get that T-shirt, that says that.
Oh, how to
learn,
unlearn. And but it's been fun, though. Definitely just going back, and every time I leave from here, I always have thoughts in my mind. I'm like, okay, what am I? Okay, I got to change this.
I keep him up at night.
Absolutely. You sure do. So, but it's all great. Happy to be a part of it, and always excited to be here. So.
Thank you. Okay, We're going to let our special guest introduce herself. She's a little embarrassed right now, and say who you are, what you do, and why you're here.
So hi guys, my name is Kiki. I am a clinical mental health counseling student at Winthrop, and I'm here to get to know everyone, hear about the podcast. But outside of school, I am a family advocate at a nonprofit called Halos, which supports kinship families. So they're their own type of caregivers. They care for the kiddos that they know, which is different from foster care, which is the kids don't know the people they're being placed with. At least with kinship care, they have some type of connection.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
that's what I do for work.
So that would be something like if your brother had a child and somehow he's no longer with us, and then you would be the person.
I see.
That would be caregiving.
That's
for
cool.
Him.
Okay, yeah, I
which
like
they
that.
try to promote a lot more, because for mental health purposes, that's actually in their best interest.
Right. Awesome. Okay.
It's very alternative, very cool. Thank you, Kiki. Kiki, you have to speak louder.
I got you.
I'm sorry.
Because I'm loud. All right, so we're going to continue to talk about financial caregiving. And, if you guys have anything to say, ask Kiki and J-Rock about it. Just let me know, because I know it's one of those subjects that, first of all, most people are uncomfortable talking about in their own worlds, about their own thing with their own partners and people. But in this situation where you really should do it, a lot of people don't do it for lots of different taboo reasons. And it's one of those things that you just learn when you hit the ground running.
Right.
Nobody teaches you how to do financial caregiving for someone who you have to, and in our case, we're talking about adults, aging people, not children. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to provide financial caregiving. Last week, we talked about what it is. We talked about what it looked like. We talked about how you can prepare for it, some of the things that might come up, some personal shit with me,
Yeah.
And then we kind of moved on from there. Now we're going to get into how do you do this, right? How do you do financial caregiving? So some of the things, these are some of the tips and some of the different ways that we can go about doing it if you find yourself in a position where you're suddenly caregiving, particularly family caregiving, and the person is an older adult, an aunt, an uncle, your dad, or maybe an older brother or something like that.
Yeah.
So you talk about finances with the person you are caring for and care about. That's a lot easier said than done, because the assumption is they want you to talk about it, right? And most people don't. Most people are very
Right. Yeah.
guarded, right? Very guarded about that kind of, or flat out secretive about it,
Yeah.
So try to get a full picture of their financial situation, including potential areas of stress and concern. This really can be really difficult, particularly between a parent and a child. So last week we talked a little bit about my situation with my parents and that. And my situation, I said a million times, was very different. I was very fortunate. It just was not that problematic.
Yeah.
They were willing to do it. I had a great relationship with them. But one of the things for me, which is a big point of advocacy that I'm trying to help people do, and a lot of people can't even do this, but if you're in a position where you can do this, this is what I would do. This is what I did, and I found it the amount of stress it took off of my back was so valuable, and that is to simplify the finances as much as possible. So simplify yours, first of all. Make sure you don't have a whole lot of debt. Make sure you don't have exes coming out of nowhere looking for, they want half of your house, half of your everything that you have for whatever the reason is. Make sure that that's clean, that that's taken care of, that your divorces are taken care of, that your custody situations are taken care of, and they don't sprout out at the last minute when you're trying to caregive, which happened in my family. I was supposed to be partnering with my brother to do this, and just at the minute I landed here, there was this whole thing with a custody with a small child, and that just ate up $1,000 easy a month for him, and it just became a big stressor for him, and got very, very, and no matter how I helped him in general, it was just always going to be a thing, and of course we love my nephew and everything, but that was not something that was planned when we went into the caregiving agreement. It just became part of what we had to deal with, whether he did it individually or I helped him in other ways. It was just the norm now, right? So what was helpful in that was that I myself did everything that I could to try to minimize my own financial situation. So I didn't have $1 million in debt. I didn't have a fancy car that I was still trying to pay off. I didn't have all kinds of credit card bills with clothes and jewelry and all that kind. I didn't have that because I had already been working on minimizing that. I had a lot of school debt. Who doesn't have that, right? Thousands of dollars in that, but I didn't worry about that. And then, of course, I had my house at the time, my mortgage. But just really silly things that you don't need, I tried really hard not to have that. And then with my parents, I really made an effort when we started this journey together to simplify that too. So I had them consider liquidating their house and their properties in the Dominican Republic, and they did. And then they used that money to live off of when they came here and to buy another little house here. So it was all about spend what you have, live what you have. We don't know how long you're going to live. And then when that's done, I have my plan on how we're going to take care of you, you know, and the family does.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I really was and they were really, really good because they're very frugal, simple people anyway, but they did not incur a whole lot of debt. And there wasn't a whole lot of debt on their part, so they didn't come with all these credit cards and all these people chasing them, and they were pretty much easy peasy with that. And when I say that is helpful, I'm telling you that is almost more than 70-80% of the stressor
Yeah.
of the caregiving is when you know that that's not part of it, that you're so over your head with things that is a problem. Because believe it or not, it doesn't matter how well you plan it, there are going to be expenses
Right.
that you're going to struggle for and you're
Yeah.
going to struggle with, and it's going to happen. And it happens to everybody, good, bad, and indifferent. Doesn't make it, not judging anybody. It is just part of the caregiving game where that happens. So it doesn't matter how clean you have everything, at
Right.
some point it's going to come back. Last week we talked about my mom's cancer medication and how expensive it was, and because they didn't know the efficacy yet, I had to pay for it, which meant I had to choose between her and a house that I didn't need anymore, in my opinion, because I had something else that I had already paid for in full. So I told the bank, take it, I don't care, foreclosure, do whatever, I'm going to do this for my mom, and then that's what I did. Most people don't have that, but I feel that even when that went away, it was helpful. Like, I don't have that to worry about anymore,
Yeah.
so that's good. Let somebody else worry about that. So that is, do you guys have any thoughts about that? Any?
No, that's just really, really great advice, especially for, like I said, past couple episodes, I've just been just thinking about these things because, like I said, my folks are getting older. So these are things that's kind of in the back of my mind. They're kind of okay, I'm just got to get prepared because, it's uncomfortable conversations, but they need to happen, so you can get ready. So, yeah, no,
Ready.
100%.
What about you? You got any opinion?
I think about it all the time when it comes to my mom. She also had a cancer scare as I was graduating from my undergraduate degree. So that was terrifying, right?
Sorry.
Like, do I just drop out of school and
Right.
help her set up? Because we had just got a new house. So it was just like, she can't work. She needs all of these treatments, but she told me not to drop out, but I was ready. I was like, this is my last semester. I don't care. But I was also a broke college student.
Yeah.
So it was like, I couldn't even think about where to start. I was like, where do I get the money? How do I do this? Because she supported me through school.
Yeah.
And I'm a twin. So my twin and I both kind of were like, okay, maybe we start working. We save all this money. But yeah, it's scary as her health goes up and down and she gets older, especially because my grandparents are still alive. I have an 88-year-old grandfather in the British Virgin Islands. And it's scary. I mean, he has bad knees. He can't hear. His sight is going. And it's like, what do we do? What is our plan? And the money, because he's on an island. I live here.
Yeah.
So I think a lot about the money and just how much it costs to pay for things, because he can't buy medicine. I pay for it.
Yeah.
And he's so far away, so I have to pay for shipping and just everything.
I'm telling you, and that's why when I hear people whining about silly things in my immediate world, I just look at them funny. Like, that's your inconvenience. That's what you're worried about. I mean, I am judgy about it. I really am, and that goes back to what Kiki and I were talking about earlier, because Kiki came today to talk about being a counseling intern in a new teaching practice. So we were talking about that a little bit, and one of the things that I got hot about was how we've all lost the sense of community. Like, we really need to do this. Community service needs to be part of anything and everything that we're doing, no matter how popular we are. And like you do. And so part of what we're doing is the counseling interns, bringing them back to that. Like, bringing back to, what does our community service look like? It doesn't have to be anything fancy and glamorous. The shelter down the street, they need mental health. And the counseling interns need people to give mental health to graduate. So that makes sense, right? Putting them together. So like little simple things like that help. But anyway, so it is difficult to think about what could potentially happen. And like I said, in my case, it was a little different. I planned this way ahead of time when I survived 9/11, and I knew this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was take care of my parents. So I was able to kick it up in motion before they were sick, before they were really aged, before all of these complications happened. So I had a good head start on making sure that whatever needed to be cleaned up got cleaned up, and they had all the fun that they could have in the meantime until their last few years. They couldn't. So the big takeaway from that is, get your own finances together. If you can foresee that there could be anybody, your spouse, like with my nibbling, who has a husband, nobody would have ever predicted that in their early 20s as newlyweds, her husband had a stroke, and now he's absolutely disabled, and the three of us take care of him, and it's great, it's fun, because we love the intergenerational thing, multi-generational thing. But for for my nibbling, it was incredibly devastating because they were young, they were starting out their life. It changed everything in their world, including their finances and getting the disability and getting everything done all the way down until a few years later that now she's officially his caregiver. Like they hired her as his caregiver, and then she also has her other job. So that was never foreseen. Like who...
Yeah.
I didn't foresee that.
At all.
I'm thinking about my mom and my dad and all of us doing that, and like, poof, this happened to her. So understand that this can happen. Car accidents can happen.
Yeah. Yep.
You can slip somewhere, fall down, and that'll be that. Or it can just be something that comes on that you can't avoid. So, or that comes on to somebody. So just plan. So if you can have cars paid off, there's one thing that I learned, and I am a big believer in, it's like stop taking mortgages when you're in your 50s and your 60s. Like, stop. Don't do that. Don't get second mortgages. Don't get any of that stuff. Like, pay off as much as you can.
Right.
And I mean, if you have to, I'm not saying.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not judging you for that.
Yeah.
But if you're only doing it to level up, as they say, or to do whatever it is that they're doing these days to be influenced by, like, that's just not smart thinking. Like, if you have a house that's almost paid off, and you're going to be looking at retirement 10, 20, 15 years from now, and then you have people aging out, and that you don't want to take on that debt. You don't want to take on new debt. Like, don't do that
at all.
Get yourself, pay off your old car. Get yourself something that you can pay off soon, or save up your money and buy it in cash. Whatever it is that you need to do, minimize the amount of debt that you're going to have, because the rest of the money that you're going to spend, believe me, you're going to be spending it on everything else that's going to come up while you're caregiving.
Yeah.
So that's one big takeaway. All right, so be sensitive to people's need for independence. Talk to the person that you're helping. Don't come in there bossing them around like Miss Bossy Pants and telling them what they need to do and that you're taking over and all that. Remember that these people have been independent and taking care of themselves, however it may be, whether it's in a raggedy way or it's in a really good way. They've been doing it. They haven't needed you to do it. So when you come in and suddenly you're the next generation, but you know better and all that, they're gonna feel a little bad about that. They're gonna give you a little pushback. I got some pushback from my father at first about certain things, but then eventually, little by little, I eased into it, and then he was like, "Here, take everything, I'm like, do it all, because I'm gonna go live my life." And he went, and then every month we would sit down and go over, the account and the this and the money and whatever. And he was like, "Okay," and he always had access with his little debit card that I told you. And he wanted, so he never had to come to me to ask me for money. Like he had access to whatever money was there to do whatever he wanted to. But there were times when he shouldn't, he wanted to buy a brand new car. And we were like, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
But yeah, so be careful with the people that you're that you're going to help, and try not to be that intrusive, and make them feel like they're not losing their independence, when it comes to finances, and have them be part of the process that you're going through. Because at one point, they're going to have to give it up, and you are going to have shown that you're doing the right thing by them for them to rest easy. So ask how you can help. Offer to start with small little tasks like paying little bills for them. That's what I did. I paid off little bills for them and with them, so that they can see it was going away. Ask for permission to take over responsibilities. I did do that, if appropriate. Sometimes, no. Sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah.
But most of the times you ask and they'll be okay with it. And then honor their wishes as much as possible in decisions and actions, right? So don't like, if they're used to things being a certain way, don't go like 100% the other direction and expect these people who have been living their whole life a certain way to now be doing it your way, and they're not going to have attitude about it.
Yeah.
They're going to feel bad about it. So be considerate about those kind of things. So if appropriate, seek input from others. If other family members want or need to be involved, it's better to include them sooner than later, before misunderstandings occur. If the family cannot agree, then specially trained elder care coordinators can mediate in certain states. In my case, I think I may have mentioned this last week, when I was taking care of my parents here, and I had, like a room where I did my schoolwork and I lived and all that. There was like a little area, it was like a little office area, a little extra table to it. And on there was like the simplified version of anything and everything that had to do with the caregiving of my parents, including the money. So everything that had to do with the bank, everything that had to do with the bills, everything that had to do with me, everything that had to do with their care was in these little like grab and go things, accordion file things, and one had Papi's name on it and one had Mommy's name on it. And then it had it all broken down with their caregivers. And so it was just like a little mini to-go office, so that if something happened to me, or anything could happen, or maybe people were feeling sideways about me or whatever, and they wanted to see what was going on, they always had access to it. They can always go in that room with or without my permission. It said what it was. Everybody knew it was there for that, and they had 100% access to all of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you can do something like that, do that. I mean, at one point, somebody asked me to give this whole detailed accountant version of everything, and I said, "Fuck no! First of all, no. Are you a social worker with some sort of some sort of what is that called? I forget what it's called in our field, where you have to have signed consent on the people whose information you're asking about it. And I know you don't have it because they're my parents. So they were asking for all this. And then not only that, that's just a lot of work to sit down and do that.
I can imagine, yeah.
Years and years. Go look at the paperwork. Go look at everything that's up there. The people that need to look at it and have access to it and should be looking at it, know where it is.
Right.
And they have access to it. I don't need a strange person I don't know telling me through them that they have, and asking me to do work. No. You do it, but anyway, so just make sure people know where the paperwork is, where the stuff is, and that they can access it, so that if someone ever tries to say that to you, you can say, no, you know where everything is, you go look.
There you go.
Which is what I did. You go look, and if you have questions, you ask the questions.
Right.
But I'm not doing your work for you, kind of thing. So, and again, if the person has a spouse and they have a different opinion about what you're doing, you need to take that person into consideration, even if you don't like them. Even if they don't like you need to take that person. So luckily my mom and my dad didn't have that problem, but if my mom didn't like somebody in the family doing something, you have to take that into consideration. She doesn't want that person doing whatever it is, and you can't force her to want that person to let that person do that. You have to find a way to work around that, just out of respect,
right? For sure,
and to keep the peace.
Yeah,
because then you leave and I'm stuck with a mad mommy. I don't want that. I don't want no mad mommy.
Not at all.
So make a list of all expenses and debts for yourself, including utilities, mortgage, rent payments, car payments, insurance, real estate taxes, anything like that. And like I said, the more you can streamline that stuff and the least of those things that you can have to make a list about, the better.
Right.
But always have a little list, an envelope, anything that a file system, something that anybody can access and that you can access, and that it's simple. It's very, very simple.
Right.
Right. All right. So document all income. These days, I don't know that you necessarily have to do that because everything is so digital, right? Everything is so digital. I have every bank statement going all the way back from 2011 when I landed here up until today, and it's all digital.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to go in there and look at my bank accounts and see anything, and my mom and my dad's name is on there, so they can go on there and look at every single day where every single penny went for every single thing and why. They can see that. So if you have the ability to download these things, download them now, because they're making it so that you can't go back more than 7 years. So luckily I had already downloaded that stuff because I would not, and I needed it right now.
Yeah.
And I would not have had access to that, but I just thought of it and I downloaded it. So I have everything from that year. So if I ever get audited or anybody ever wants to come and, whatever, here.
Right, yeah.
Look at it, take
there you
it,
go.
question me, I don't care, But if you can do that, do that. And it also gives peace of mind to the person you're caregiving to. In a moment of lucidity or in a moment of them wanting to know what's up, which my father did have those moments. How much money do we have in the bank? What's going on in the bank? What's happening? I want to see. And then I would bring it to him, and he would spend, I don't know, an hour fidgeting through papers, and it just made him feel like he knew what was going on, and he asked me questions, and then he would forget about it. Forget about it and be fine, and just didn't even know that he did that. But you have it there at the ready, for them to look at in black and white. What do you guys think about that? Does that sound doable?
Oh yeah, man, this sounds amazing. I just for me, it just makes me want to be like, okay, man, how organized you had yours. It's man,
I was very organized.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm when it comes to organization, I'm getting better, but it's I'm so used to organized chaos.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, like if you go in my house, it's like you might see stuff all over the place, but I know where they at.
know where
You know,
they're
and it's kind of like I got to
Yeah.
change that.
In this case, you really do have to have at least one area in your, like I used to just call it the command center. That was
Okay.
the command center, and
Yeah.
everything that was there needed to be, because, for example, like there were moments where my mother needed to go to the hospital in the middle of the night, right? So all anybody had to do, if I couldn't do it because I was trying to get her out of the bed and dealing with the EMTs or something like that, one of my nieces or one of my siblings had to do was go up to that room, go to that area, and grab the little accordion file thing with it had a little, what do you call that, a little handle to it, and the blue one said mommy and the black one said papi, and I still
Right.
have it in I still have those things in my closet.
Yeah,
They're there. And it is a little accordion file, and each little pocket said, Medicaid, Medicare, United Healthcare, this doctor, that doctor, and this medication, and then like everything about their prescriptions, and it was just all organized in alphabetical order. So, like, CO can fly up to the room and grab the mommy
You know exactly
thing,
where it's at,
and
yeah.
there we were off to the hospital, and somebody had that in their hand.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the same thing with Papi. Or when the ambulance shows up, this is something to know if you're caregiving for people. When the ambulance shows up, the very first thing they're going to ask you for is the person's ID, the person's insurance cards, and if they have like a Social Security card or something like that, or a Medicaid card or whatever card, they're going to ask you for that.
Yeah.
So have that in a place. We happen to have it in that little accordion thing, so anybody can open it. Social Security, here it is. What else?
Right.
So anything that the EMTs asked for, anybody can access. They didn't have to come get me, who was partly hysterical somewhere,
Yeah.
and ask me for something, because it was there in the little plastic bag inside that accordion, and all you had to do was pull it out. And these EMTs love it because it makes their
Make the job
so
easier.
much easier. The hospital loves it.
Yeah. Man,
It makes it so much easier. The other thing that I would say to do, which I did, and you with your family in the situation, so when there's a lot of medication that they have to take, right? So my mom had all her medications, and my dad had all of his medications.
Yeah.
So you need to be organized about that. So I had like their daily medications that they would get every day, and everybody knew where they were and what they got and all that.
Yeah.
And it said Monday morning, you get this, Tuesday, because the little pill boxes come that way. So you put all the pills that way. But then you have to have like all the backup supplies somewhere, right? And then you have to have the prescriptions themselves, and where do you get it from?
Right.
Walmart, or do you get it from Walgreens?
Yeah.
Like you have to have all of that in a place where if you're dealing with something else, somebody else can deal with that, gathering that.
Yeah.
So I even had that organized in a way where everybody knew where it was. There was a little place where it was all at inside a bag, and inside that bag were little pouches with each medication that said mommy's medicine for cancer, papi's medicine for diabetes, so that if the hospital asks, which they always ask, they're going to want to know, what medications are they on? Well, there you are with your little grocery bag or your little bag.
Right here, yeah.
You're like, hold on, let me pull out the little plastic, and they would pull out the little baggies, and it would say, and the nurses would love it because they would just grab the bag and go,
Right.
okay, Pompey, and they would write their charts up based on that. It just helps you avoid the stressor that comes from that because of all the other stress that you're going to be dealing with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it helps them coordinate the new care for whatever's happening to them in the moment based on that information that
Right.
they already have.
Right.
So do that if you can. Let's see. So document all income, we said that. Okay, so create a budget. I didn't really need to do that because my budgeting was looking at the statements every month on the bank. That was, you know how it automatically budgets for you? If you wanted to do that now, you can set it to do that and it'll do that
Right.
by categories. But really, if you have a simple money in, money out, and it all looks the same most of the time, which for us it did. Every month it was the same Walmart that mommy bought at, the same, whatever that I bought this at, the same whatever. Like it was usually all the same. So I would just be looking for some big unusual things that maybe I wasn't. What happened here? None of us.
Right.
What's this? We didn't buy that. But I would look at it, at that. But some people like budgets, like Alexa's a big budget person. So if you're good at that and you like it, a little simple Google budget thing,
Right.
you just plug it in and then you can just look at it and see what's what. How much money's coming in from where? How much money's going out from where? Love that.
Yeah.
Now I do budgets. I love budgets.
Yeah.
But it can even be a written budget. It doesn't have to be a fancy online one. You just write it down. One column with the income, one column with the expenses, and then a little plus and minus at the bottom, and you're good.
Right, yeah.
So a written budget should include all income and expenses, both fixed and irregular. So I did that because I had their fixed income, which was their Social Security. And then my income was very irregular because I did a lot of contract work. And so some weeks I worked more than the other week. And this week I wasn't working because I was caregiving and in school. And then the other week I got caregiving stuff that came in to help me pay for something else. It was very irregular. And I would have a list of what that was so I can understand what to expect when as I was doing. But if you don't know and it's just coming in whenever,
right.
I think next week we might get the check for that thing. Maybe I'll be able to get some rest, but then it's just going to stress you out more.
Right.
But what you know when the fixed and the irregular stuff is, and you just have it on a little piece of paper or on some sort of budget sheet, that'll be good. Make a plan for how to pay for fixed expenses. And so what are the fixed expenses? It's utilities, mortgage, rent, insurance, stuff that you know you have to pay all the time.
Right.
Food, transportation, some estimation of out-of-pocket medical costs. That's the big one because you never know.
Right.
You have the over-the-counter stuff. You have the stuff that the doctor's saying the insurance won't cover. And you got to go fight with them now for 6 months. So you got to cover it.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
You cover it. Like you have that, which I had over and over and over again happen to me. And then a calendar. This is the best advice I can give anybody. Whether it's a digital calendar or an actual paper calendar. I had both, but we had it on the refrigerator, so anybody that came through the kitchen could see. Like,
right.
who went where, when, and what, who needed to be where, what, when, and where. So you're not texting all damn day.
Right.
You know how that gets.
Yeah,
texting back and forth.
Yep.
And somebody doesn't read something, somebody misread the time or whatever, but there's a calendar. And now that you can share calendars online, we do that. Like we do the Google Calendar thing.
Yep.
That's the best.
Right,
I love
right.
it. You know, and then people know when what's due, when appointment is this.
Right.
And by people, it can just be you and like the lady across the street that helps you sometimes. Or you and your brother. And he doesn't need to do anything ever, but at least he can access the calendar to know what's where and when.
Yeah.
You know, either one is good, but it can be really, just takes off the stress of when the crazy stuff happens. You don't have to dig around to look at something. You can just refer back to that. All right. So in my case, I really had it where, for example, for my parents, they were living in a cottage, and you don't know this, Kiki, but there was a little cottage that I had built and I paid for in the back of my brother's house. And then my mom and my dad aged out in there, and that's where they were aging out, and that's where they were, you know, when they got ill, it was like their hospice and all that kind of stuff. So it was paid, so there was no rent, no nothing like that. But, you know, so my brother he was paying the electricity bill for the cottage, and he was paying the insurance on the cottage, because that was like his portion, his help of what he was doing. And it just made sense because he had the main house that belonged to him, and he already had an electric thing set up, and he already had an insurance with the house. So it was much easier than me trying to get, I just landed here, like, nothing, let me get this. So it just made more sense. And then I paid, they had cable, they had a landline phone, they had newspaper delivery, and a bunch of other little like house-related things that they enjoyed, they liked, and so I paid for that for them. So like decide with whoever you need to decide with, who's gonna take care of what part of what, and so then you know that's off you, because somebody else is paying those two things, and then the other thing is not your business because that other person is paying those things.
Right.
Right? And then you set it on automatic and you get it paid, and that's how we did it, and it worked out really well. You know, like that, I thought worked out really well.
Right.
Make an inventory of accounts, insurance policies, credit cards, website user IDs. A lot of this stuff might not apply to some people that you're caregiving for, like my immigrant parents. They don't have half of the stuff, you know, but in America, a lot of people have these kind of things. So if there are insurance policies, credit cards, website user IDs, passwords, keep an inventory somewhere safe and secure or with a trusted person. You know, and let them know if it's password protected, have a spreadsheet or a piece of paper in a secure location, anything like that that'll help somebody be able to access it if they need to access that kind of thing. That's so, and especially if you don't have like hard copies of these things and everything's online these days, right?
Right.
I will caution people not to do that if you're caregiving for somebody. Print a hard copy. Print a hard copy of whatever. Your car insurance, your whatever it is, and keep it somewhere because sometimes that's just the better thing to do. Okay, so So this little the show notes talk about some electronic password solutions that you can use. I've never used them, so I can't really give my personal opinion on them. But LastPass and 1Password, I guess that's where you can safely store that kind of information, and then if somebody has the password, they can access it and get all of that.
Right.
I don't know. I never used that. But it's an option, because American families are like that. They're so kind of split apart that it makes sense for them to have something like that. So that somebody in Goose Creek and the other person in Mount Pleasant and the other person, they all can access
it. Yeah.
Where in my case, everybody lived there. So you just go up to the room where everything is.
Right.
You get it, Yeah. All right. So, so this may be simple. It's getting your name added to a joint account holder or having the primary account holder give verbal agreement authorizing you to speak on their behalf. That can get kind of hairy. In my case, my parents chose to not have to not have bank accounts. They just wanted to add their names to my checking account that I already have and have their Social Security go in there and have their own debit cards. So that anytime they put money in there or I put money in there, they had access to anything and I had access. So the three of us had access to the same account and they didn't have to deal or worry about anything else. So, that worked for us. But for some people, maybe they don't want to do that and they want to have their own account and they want to add you to that. I don't know. Yeah. Whatever works, just something that everybody can easily access. That's not going to be complicated because that's the thing. When it starts getting complicated and you have like a wife involved and some other nephew and people giving you problems about they should have access, they shouldn't have it, then it gets hairy,
Yeah.
I don't like hairy. I just don't like things getting like that. I don't like the drama. I don't like that stuff. So, you may be tempted to use the account holder's login credentials and act on their behalf, but they sort of recommend that at some point the account owner will no longer be able to confirm that they permitted you to use their login, so that can get kind of complicated, which is why in my case I didn't need to do that. So when my father's dementia kicked in, my mom could still do whatever she needed to do without his permission. And then when she had cancer and he had dementia, I can do whatever I needed and pay for their stuff. So it all was very easy. But once it starts getting complicated where you need a person's permission to do whatever and it's related to their caregiving, that can be problematic. So maybe have separate accounts. One that's just for the caregiving situation and everybody have their own stuff on the side, right? Yeah. But be very careful with that. So get authorized. People have opinions about this, but I'm just gonna say it like it is. Some people think that, you should get authorized to speak on behalf of the care recipient. I agree with that. I think you should be authorized because you never know who's going to come sideways at you one day for whatever reason. I've seen that. It's happened to me. And then they bring some new person in, and then that person thinks that you just never know.
Right.
So, so you don't plan on that when you first take on this sort of responsibility, but it can come. And if it happened to me and I was misprepared, it can happen to anyone, right? So if you can get authorized, to do that in a way that somebody else can't disrupt the care to that person. Like in my case, somebody wanted to disrupt the caring situation. They wanted to bring nannies in where they were already caregivers and nurses. And it was just one of these situations where it would have been detrimental to my father and the rest of us to do something like that. But luckily, we already had these things sort of authorized. So when he went to his daytime caregiving place that he went to, they knew who can take him out and who couldn't take him out and how that was going to happen and who was authorized to do it. So you couldn't just show up because you had this whole new plan all of a sudden.
Right.
And then you're going to show up to his daycare and they've never seen you before, but you're another child or something.
Right.
So I can take him, he's my dad. So I had to go and I had to say, don't do that. No. These people are not authorized to do this because there's situations going on, and I don't want my father disrupted that way. I want him to continue the normalcy of his care. So if you can do something like that, figure out how to do it, just really to protect the care recipient. So it's not for you. It's really not for you or anybody else. It's for them. You don't want them to start getting used as a pawn, and that can get kind of ugly. So the easiest way is to make decisions on behalf of someone else is to execute what they call a durable power of attorney. So this is a legal document that appoints someone to act on someone else's behalf. The forms are generally available on the web or free or for a nominal fee, a small fee. They require witnesses and notarization to be valid. Make a paper and an electronic copy of the power of attorney document. And as many organizations will require a copy before they speak to you about a lot of things anyway, especially about finances, right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in my case, I did have that. I don't know what happened to it. I think like in the whole dying process and cleaning out and all that, I don't know where they went, but excuse me, but that's really why, like, the organizations that took care of him, that came in to take care of him, and all the medical people and everything, that's what made them feel comfortable in dealing with, like, the one caregiver that had, the say-so, and I was able to sign for things. And not that anybody else couldn't come in and ask, and it wasn't like a secret, don't let them come or whatever.
Right.
But you can't come and make a decision on the heels of me making a decision because you're having some sort of issue with me or something, or some sort of, like, you can't do that. And I think that if you can do that, do that. So, for example, right now, and it doesn't even have to be in a complicated situation like me and my parents, what's going to happen with you. Like, my situation right now, I live in a multi-generational home, and we do caregiving for one person, right? And so all of us have to make sure that all of us know where everybody's important documents and stuff are, just in case somebody, and where his stuff is. So there's like a little command station for him in case we have to, like, grab and go. And then we have, pictures that we have of like the insurance cards, like that kind of thing, so that we're not running crazy if something happens, which it has, right? And in my case, because I'm hoping to retire soon, like, I want to retire and all that, like, it's time for people to know where my stuff is, right? So I have a place in that house, in a closet, on a shelf, where everybody knows where it's at. And it has all of my VA information. And it says it. Titi's VA and healthcare information. Like, it says it just like that.
Right there,
so you know where it is, you look at it, and it's like, okay, we're going to the VA, and you just grab and go and you take it. That has everything, my durable power of attorney. It has my do not resuscitate if this is happening and that's happening thing. And these two people have the right to decide things for me. And if they can't for some reason, then that other third person does. So I have their names clearly written down, signed, note, like all of that. So that somebody doesn't come in out of the blue and be like, hey, man, I got some, say-so here. I don't think I want her on that, whatever machine she's on. Like, no, you have to go through 3 other people before you can make that decision. They have access to my bank accounts. They know how anything that needs to happen there, they know where that's at and how to do that. Now, I don't need caregiving right now. I don't need any of that right now. But you never know. I could be driving home, get into a car accident, and then what?
Right.
Who's going to look after me?
Who's going to look after you?
Yeah.
You're right.
So they need to know, and we have that set up for Jason in our house, and everybody just sort of has an idea of where all the house stuff is, where the house papers are, where everything is, in case anybody needs to do something about it. So that's generally how you have to think about it when you step into the caregiving situation. Have all of your stuff together first, and then get theirs in place.
Yeah.
You guys have any questions about any of that?
No.
Any input? Any?
I feel like I'm going through it right now. My mom is a nurse, so she's really on top of it. I just recently got access to her MUSC records, so she's keeping me up to date with her appointments. We don't have a shared calendar, but she'll love to text in the group chat, hey, I got this appointment coming up. Because, I am her child. She has access to my bank. I'm not in hers yet, but I will soon. Yeah. But it's kind of like a setup. I think she's preactively thinking about, if her health hits the fan, I still live with her at the house. So she knows, like, I'm there. If anything happens, I know how to work all her machines. Right. I know where her medicine is. I know her little medicine case. I know what to do if she needs it. She's just, like, proactive about it, really. And so I feel,
nurses usually are. They
she's
nurses
like,
and social workers are your best
she's
friend.
like really locked in, and so I feel if anything were to happen, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm prepared, but I'm better off than most
people.
Yeah,
because at least it's in the house somewhere.
I know, and I know where all her documents are for the most part. Like I have all her glasses, I have her medicine. Like she's trying to prepare me. So
I think, and the other thing to do, like I know with my mom, we always had a bag ready for her. Like we always had a bag in the closet with her underwear, because one time something happened and she didn't have a change of underwear in the car, and it just mortified her, and she was very upset about it, and she was like silent for a long time and not happy about it. And so then we started, every time we went out, we would keep something in the car just in case something happened.
Yeah.
Like a little like day bag or something with her stuff. But then we also had like something with more in it in the closet in case we had to take her to the doctor, to the hospital, and she didn't come in. And it would have like an extra pair of underwears, extra pair of, she used to like to dress in layers because she was so thinned out from the cancer. She didn't want people seeing her bones or anything like that. And I knew she was very, very, very super sensitive about that. So she would wear a lot of layers, a lot to hide that. So I would have a bag with several things that she can put on and take off, and socks and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's just like your security thing. Like it's your grab and go if something happens. And it had like her favorite little candy in there, and it had her favorite little thing in there, her little radio, because they did like the little radio, and her little radio in there because music was a thing. So if you can think about all these little tiny things that you don't have to run around in the last minute and do, that's what you do. That's what you do. And with my dad, it was a different little setup, but it was still the same thing. We always had a little something ready for him so that if he had to stay somewhere for a while, I knew I had, for him, it was like the little iPad thing where he can watch all of his Dominican shows on.
Right.
Little, his little, I had a whole YouTube like playlist for him of all that stuff that he would just watch over and over, and all his movies. And it just calmed him. It just kept, and so no matter where we went and what we did, if he had that and one of these, like earphones, you were gold with him. But think about what the person needs and what calms them down and what makes them feel like no matter where they are, they're all right because they have their thing that they like.
Right.
And with my mom, she needed to have all of her phone numbers with her of everybody she knew on the planet. I don't know why. I don't know why. And it was just like this old-fashioned little book, like little notebook, and it was handwritten, and it had everybody's telephone number from everywhere, like all the Dominican people, all the Puerto Rican people, all the New York people, all the South Carolina, they were all there. So I always had that in her little bag for her so that she can have it with her. So whatever works for you guys, you just got to make it, cater it to the person that you're caring for, and it's just, the more you can anticipate, the better off it's going to be when it starts to get really heavy.
Yeah.
Limit risk is appropriate. So basically, if a person you're caring for has cognitive problems, like my dad did, it might make sense to get them a reloadable debit card that you manage. I did not do that for a reason. We just chose to have his card suspended or whatever that's called when you go, do that, and let him think that he still had access to the card, but for as long as he had that and like $20 or $40 in his pocket, he was good. He was fine. But some people, they'll do reloadable debit cards, for them to manage. A credit card with a low limit, ATM card for a small little tiny bank account that they can have where they won't wreak havoc if they get in there and do stuff and you're trying to pay the like electric bill or something, This allows them independence, but it limits the risk. That's what they're talking about. So commercially available apps like Careful and EverSafe, I've never used them, so I cannot vouch for them, but they offer remote monitoring on financial transactions that some people might be comfortable doing.
Right.
In our family, like the least electronic digital thing for my parents was better. Like that was the best. But for others, it's not. It works better in that way. So you just have to figure out what works best. So it'll alert the authorized person if there's an unpaid bill, an unusual activity, for example, kind of thing. All right, so keep records of what you've spent money on and any money you spend on their behalf. And your records could be, like I said, my records are my bank accounts. That's all you got. Like, just look at my bank account, you'll see everything.
Right.
They ain't no, like, other bank account anywhere with any kind. It just doesn't exist. And good luck trying to find one if you think I have that, you know?
Yeah.
So let me tell you, if I did, I would not be here right now. I would be in Puerto Rico in my mountain home somewhere living my life. But, Anyway, so the first, it'll be helpful for others to have who have questions. So if other people want to know, like, spending habits and things like that, and you have a way that works for you and doesn't inconvenience you like I did, go to the records. Don't ask me to do extra work for you. But other people might want to do the extra work just because they want to be able to say that's their thing.
Right.
Then do that and give it to the people. Like, whatever works for you, do it. And it's helpful for taxes. My parents didn't have to do taxes because they don't tax Social Security, so I didn't have to do that.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So don't forget about taxes if you do have someone, like in your dad's case, I don't know if they're in your mom's, if there's like taxes involved in anything else, just make sure
Make
real
all that's
estate
good.
taxes,
Yeah.
income taxes, anything that's required that they have, be proactive about foreseeing that that's going to be something you're going to have to gather together at some point.
Yeah.
So start keeping your eyes on that. Like,
Right.
where is that, Mom? Where do you, where are you with that? I didn't have any complications with that, but some people can really have complications with that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the more you know,
Right.
the better. So the list of things to do to begin financial caregiving duties may seem overwhelming at first, right, guys? Right, Kiki?
Absolutely.
You should see their faces. They're like, oh, am I going to make it through tonight?
Oh, yeah. I can
We're going to be
imagine.
having dreams tonight. This Xiomara, she's just, yeah. But you might as well know now, right?
Right,
Yeah.
for sure. No,
Yeah, it can seem overwhelming, but the earlier you start, and I can tell you that from experience, the earlier you start, the better it's going to be. If the person you're caring for is still competent, and that's what happened in my case, my parents were still very competent, then you may not need to do them all at once. I did not have to do them all at once, but it's a good idea to start figuring out what needs to be done eventually and start making that part of the norm
Right.
before they get to the point where you have to do 100% of it, or there's something you have to undo, if there's a
Right.
mess you have to clean it up before they get to that part,
Yeah.
So as a financial caregiver, you'll want to make sure that no new information, accounts, or debt have crept up since you put a plan in place. That is very important. That did happen to me with my father. He started opening credit card accounts at Home Depot and
They
American
got 'em.
Express. Oh, look at that! Because they want to get elderly people. They want to get.
Yeah, that's how they get
retired.
them. Yeah.
They want to get them in that. So whatever store he would get in, they would offer him, and he would be coming home with like these Home Depot, Lowe's, American, all these cards you don't need. The gas card at the corner station, the kind of thing. And I'd be like, no, we're not doing that. You're going to have a debit card. And then for a while, he did have the American Express card that he can use to do things, but I had a limit on that too.
Okay.
I had a very small limit on that. So, but whatever works for your person, you just figure it out. But just make sure you keep an eye on the mail and things like that to make sure they didn't even inadvertently sign for something that they didn't know they were signing for.
Right,
And now
for
they
sure.
have
Yeah,
this,
I
this,
just-
this store thing, that furniture store thing, that
Right,
credit
yeah.
card that they don't need,
At all.
So taking care of someone else's money-related matters, whether it's as simple as paying a few bills or as formal as getting a financial power of attorney, that is called financial caregiving. That's a new term. Did you know that?
No.
They're starting to use that now because of this, because of what's happening. And since you deal with a lot of caregivers, it's probably something that might come up in your
Oh, it does
community.
all the time
Yeah.
because you're in kinship caregiving. It's not like you're giving up your child. Most
Yeah.
of these are grandparents raising grandkids,
Yeah.
and so not only are you raising your grandkids, but you're also trying to support your child.
Yeah.
So they're still like in
That's
the
tough.
sense they're supporting and re-caregiving for their own child.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a toll, and we have a lot of caregivers that double as the kinship caregiver, but also like their child has a severe mental
Right.
disability, or they got hurt in an accident. Now you're caring for your child and your child's child. You have power of attorney. You have to make all the decisions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of clients coming in with that. Like I have even people who should be planning their retirement coming in now because they have a partner who, whether it was because they overdosed or accidentally overdosed or purposely overdosed, or whatever happened to them, whatever it is that happened, and now they have like a brain related injury, and so they can't take care of themselves. So instead of being their wife, girlfriend, fiance, now I'm their caregiver, and what that entails means I can't retire now, and I'm old and I'm really tired, and I want to.
Yeah.
So it turns into a big mess. Come on in. This is Aunt Kiki.
Hi.
He's part of the crew. He's part of the
second
podcast. Yeah, the next podcast. Yeah, we're talking about financial caregiving part 3 right now. So come sit. All right. So where were we? So it's really common for caregivers to begin with taking care of simple personal matters, right? Like you were talking about.
Yeah.
But transition into providing financial care over time. That is so important to know. Like, no matter what, you, and you, probably you too. Like, at some point, you are going to be the financial caregiver also.
Right.
You know, in addition to everything else. And that's why that term is a new term that they're using in the field now, because it's so common. It's just such a thing, you know? So because needs can be fluid and they change quickly over time, it's important to understand potential legal duties and liabilities ahead of time. So there's this one organization called Caring Info that provides resources for understanding the financial caregiving and the pitfalls that are avoided. I'm going to have it all in the show notes, so you'll have the resources and the references to all of this. So learn how to how to take on this important role while protecting yourself and your care recipient at the same time. I cannot stress that anymore. Last recording, I had a big old chip on my shoulder about this, like, because we always try to take it back to mental health, right? Like, what the hell does this have to do with this mental health podcast? Again, like I said last week, if you don't have your mental health right, if you don't take care of your mental health and make that your number one fucking priority, you have no business caregiving for anybody under any circumstances. It's just not going to work. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to cause yourself harm. You're going to cause that person even more harm, and you're going to be no good to anybody around you. So the more that you can take care of your own mental health will make all of these things less stressful on everybody else around you, right?
Right.
What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, 100%. Have to. Got to. Yeah. There's no other way.
I agree.
Ian agrees. Yeah, no, it's really important, and that's how it all ties in. And like I said, I have a lot of clients coming in now, and they come in thinking, you're the depression guru, you're the anxiety guru, I am here so you can help me with that. And then after I do 1 or 2 sessions, I realize this is all about, this one in particular, like, this is all about your father who's at home right now with brain cancer, and you've been taking care of him as this young person, just you and your brother, and then your mother's also sick. And so you've been like this caregiver of your father for all this time, and you think that anxiety and depression has nothing to do with that?
Right.
Like, it has everything to do with that. We need to get you right again so that is not chicken or the egg. Chicken or the egg. You know, like,
that's true.
So we need to understand that that's why the whole mental health component really has to be priority up there. Above all other people, you have to be the more important one. Yeah. Even when people look at you sideways and treat you like shit. We've all had that, right?
Absolutely.
We've that happen.
Oh, man.
To the best of us.
Yeah,
it happens.
100%.
You got to be able to cry that shit out. You got to be able to say, and then get up and say, fuck it, another day. I got to go do this.
Yeah.
One way or the other. St. Michael will take care of me, and I'm going to and then at night, cry all you want. But the next day, those people that are not there for you, once they show you that, that's what you radically accept it. Radical acceptance, you know? Because if they're not there for you and these little teeny shits that go on in your caregiving, where in the hell are they going to be?
Right.
When the real shit hits the fan and it gets real bad. Like, you should have been supporting this person this whole time. It shouldn't just be crisis-oriented caring. You know, like, it has to be everyday-ish so that person doesn't lose their mind while they're doing this, you know? Right. So take care of your mental health. I always say that. So taking care of a loved one can come with extra expenses. This is a big one that we talked about last week. You know, but with smart planning, you can keep your finances in check while providing great care. I have to say that I did a pretty damn good job at that for the most part, but it was not easy. And it doesn't mean I didn't fuck up and make mistakes too, you know, but it's just minimized it for me. To be mindful of my own stuff, it just helped. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind. Budgeting for caregiving costs. Start by planning for the money you'll need to spend on caregiving. So whatever that looks like for you, it's going to be different for you. It's going to be different for J-Rock, and it's going to be different for me, depending on what your person already has set up. Right. How you can draw on that and depend on that, how they have managed their own lives, what kind of energy they have, sort of thing. In my case, my parents were immigrants, so their ability to kind of work with a system here was a little bit more challenging than, say, someone who's been here their whole life and understand. So they needed like a me or another person who knows how the systems work to do all of that for them. They would have never been able to deal with DSS, DHHS, Even those of us who are professionals can just die up on that hill with DSS, you know, or with social services, or with Social Security, or Medicaid and Medicare. So some people cannot manage that, and those are the people you see suffering who do have, they have benefits, but they don't even know where to begin to do it, and they don't have people to do it for them, so then they suffer in silence, and we don't know about them. And then other people who do know how to manage it and handle it will have that in place for you, so that all you have to do is manage it, for them. So anyway, plan for that. Keep track of what you spend, the medical bills, transportations, and all of that. This is going to help you see where the money's going and where you can cut some costs if you need to. Explore financial assistance options. I became the queen of resources but I knew a lot of good social workers, and I used to do case management and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't foreign to me to do it. But most people don't know about that stuff, right? Like right? Do you find that they come in and they're like, what are you talking about? There's a grant. Yeah. What do you mean, the Trident area? Who are these people?
Trident AAA. I love that.
Yeah, they're great. So explore all of the options that are around you, including the government ones. There is no shame in Medicaid. There is no shame in SNAP. My mom, in the end, she actually qualified for SNAP.
Okay.
And she just used her little card to treat herself, to go to the food line and buy every little treat that she ever wanted for herself that had nothing to do with the grocery budget. I didn't even count on that money for anything.
Right.
Like, it was just whatever they sent her, she spent on whatever, so every little bit helps. So what are the legal prerequisites for becoming a financial caregiver? Any thoughts? Any ideas? So basically, what needs to happen in order for you to become the financial caregiver? Does something need to happen before?
I don't know. I would think if you want to be a caregiver, like immediately I think like, okay, do you have any kind of like a background check just to make sure like, hey, do you have any I don't know, warrants? Do you have any have you been grifting other people that we're not aware of? Like, kind of have to go through just to make sure, that's just off the top. It
doesn't hurt. It's kind of like a little known thing that like every job that I don't know, maybe you had to do this too. Every job that I've had to have in South Carolina since the day I landed here. I had to have a SLED
Yes, you
background.
have to do the SLED. Yeah.
Every single one. There wasn't one job that I had where I did not have to be subjected to SLED coming and checking out everything ever about me under the sun. They came in and you have to wait because it's very exhausted and very whatever. And then they would do the federal one where they would check everywhere else to make sure that you're not stealing money over here and stealing money over there. Or, they want it for child abuse or something. So every job that I ever had. So it never occurred to me that for my parents, anybody would think that I should be checked on like that. Because I can't even do my regular job without having a clean ass record. So what is your, but now it just came up recently and I'm like, oh my God, that's incredible. I've had this always. And I never had to say it out loud. Now I have to say it out loud and I say it out loud. So it's really important. Like, just make sure that you feel confident in yourself, that you're clean and your shit's clean. And if people want to say sideways things about them, let them. Just have your record straight, have your shit straight, have your stuff straight, and do not give into it, man. Do your job. Your job is to take care of that person. That is your job. Stay focused. Like they say in the military, stay mission focused. Just stay fucking mission focused. That's all you can do, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So, all right. So the question was, what do you need to do to become financial caregiving does not need to be authorized through official paperwork. You want me to say that again real loud for the people in the back? Financial caregiving for your person does not need to be authorized through official paperwork. However, many people manage someone else's financial interests without any legal documents. Like in my case, I didn't need that shit. My parents trusted me. There's a reason they chose me, and they lived a good fucking life, right, Aunt? They lived a good life, right? My parents were very well. I will die on that hill. I am proud of it. I am confident of it, and I can brag about it if I want to. I did a damn good job with them, and I am thrilled that is how they ended. And I wish that for everybody. If I can help anybody and everybody have that experience, I wish that for them too. So, however, formal documents such as the financial power of attorney really can be very useful before the person receiving care becomes increasingly unable to make decisions for themselves. It just makes it easier for you if you have other people around you fussing and stuff, So it just makes it easier to have that, and it protects you from stuff. But it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory at all.
Yeah.
There are some situations where I'm like, you should have that. Yeah, that should be a place. But generally, if you really have, like you have, Kiki, this is Aunt. Aunt, this is Kiki.
Hi.
She's a counseling intern. So one of the things that we were talking about earlier is Kiki also lives in a multi-generational, intergenerational caregiving situation, right? So you live with your mom. You're kind of caregiving for your mom. Your mom has health issues, but she's not at this point yet.
No.
Yeah. But you're like foreseeing, and then she trusts you.
Yeah, she
So
does.
if she needs you to do whatever, she's going to trust you. But is she going to come at you and say, no, before that, you need to sign? That's not the kind of relationship
No.
you have with her. Other people might need to do that.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Other people should do that.
Yeah.
But there are many of us who don't need that. So,
Right.
like, you just be careful, like,
Yeah.
what you're saying about people, because some people don't need that, some people do. So many institutions will not even speak with anyone other than the account owner without written documentation. So if no financial power of attorney has been executed before the person becomes unable to speak for themselves, either through illness or dementia, the caregiver will have to petition the court for authorization such as a power of attorney. So how much can a family member get paid for caregiver is the next question. But before we get into that, do you guys have any questions, or especially as you're going into the season of potential caregiving for your people, do you have any questions about that whole thing that we just talked about, or do you get it?
No, I get it. Like, it's pretty much to the point to where, especially like with the power of attorney,
Yeah.
things like that. Like, it's things that I've, like I said, I've kind of just been getting ready. Just,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this has been pretty simple, which is great because again, for the people listening, it could be like it feels like intimidating because you're like, oh man, I don't know where to begin and everything. But the fact that it's kind of like simple, at least to me, it's like
It is.
straightforward. It's like, oh, okay, this is what I need to know.
It's not
So-
as this big mystery sort of thing.
Right.
It's just you don't know what you don't know, but once you know it, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
Yep.
like that makes
I
sense.
did more than that. I've
Yeah.
been to school.
Right.
I've had a job.
Yeah.
I can do this. I know how to do that. So, so just make sure, you figure out what's going to work for you and your situation and do that. So this is the fun part. How much can a family member get paid to be a caregiver? In your situation with the, what are they called again? The
Kinship caregivers.
Kinship caregiver. And those are the grandparents mostly, but usually a family member that's taking care of children because the children's parents are unable to, rather than sending them to foster care, if that's possible. So do they get paid for being caregivers, or do they get like that foster care stipend? Like, how does this work right now in this state?
So the only way they get paid, and it's almost the same. So the language is informal caregiving. If
Yeah.
you're informal, like I would be with my mom, there's no written
Yeah.
legal anything.
Oh, got it. Yeah, yeah.
Then I don't get anything from anybody. I'm
Yeah.
not getting paid.
Yeah.
And it's the same for our caregivers. If it's informal, like my child just dropped the kid off, I'm
Yeah.
not going to leave him behind.
Right,
They're
right.
not getting paid. But in this state, they just kicked off being a kinship foster placement, so they would have to get licensed as a foster care parent to get paid. Otherwise, they ain't getting no money.
Yeah. Did I knock my microphone off? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. So, if anybody isn't familiar with the foster care system, so my mom and my dad were foster care parents our whole life. So I've got like a bunch of siblings that are foster care that aged out with us and all that. And then we adopted they adopted the last one. She was an emergency case. Like, she was literally found on the street. She
Yeah.
was like a homeless child. Her mom was nowhere to be found, and she was, Anyway, so they ended up adopting her. But my mother did have to get licensed and all of that, and my mother did get a check from the state of New York every month.
Yep.
And
Okay.
it was calculated with a formula to help pay for some of the stuff. It wasn't like she was making money and like buying
Right,
money.
right, yeah.
It was just to kind of offset the expense for each child.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like custody money, right?
I see. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you have
yeah.
a custody agreement with somebody and they send you child support. Like,
Yeah.
it was kind
Yeah.
of like that. I don't know. I don't know if South Carolina does that. If they pay their foster care
It's
parents.
calculated very similarly.
Yeah,
Like
it's a
you
formula.
get it per how many kids you got or whatever.
Yeah.
So
So with the kinship people, they're starting to do that.
they're
starting-
so the
Well, we
state-
want them to do that.
Yeah, the state is getting a little bit more flexible with the idea of foster licensing kinship caregivers. It's just the numbers. It's
Yeah,
a number game.
numbers.
It looks like we have more foster care kids
Yeah.
when in reality they're not really.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting, and I know for caregivers, especially for adults, a lot of my caregivers that are doubling up, taking care of their parents and taking care of a kid,
Right.
they have to like go through Medicare to get paid. They have to like give credentials and be like,
Right.
no, I'm their caregiver.
Yeah.
I have no clue how much they're being paid, but I do know it's a process.
So that's what we're going to talk about. So I found out towards the end of caregiving for my parents that there was a way for me to actually, since I was the 24/7 family caregiver, as opposed to the come in for 4 hours caregiver that got to go home thing, because they already were getting paid from whatever source they were getting paid from, Medicaid, Medicare, the healthcare place, whatever. Me, I wasn't. So I found out towards the end that there was a way for me to get paid if I went through the Medicare or Medicaid or something, some state thing, where then they would pay me the $12 or whatever it was. They would pay me an hour, which would be fine. That would help.
Yeah.
But I never got to do it because they each passed away before, and then I got kind of wrapped up. But that's what we just got CO with the lady
Gotcha.
doing the caregiving on there. So they figured out, so if you have Medicaid, like in our case, Jason has Medicaid because he's 100% disabled, so he qualifies for that. And CO's the 24/7 person anyway, and Alexia and I are the backups, right? We take care of her, we take care of him when she's not there, and all that kind of stuff. So instead of hiring somebody to come in and be a caregiver for Jason outside of the family, they just basically made Jason the client and CO the official caregiver. So now CO's the employed person by the caregiving service people right here next door, which you're going to meet next week. Yeah. They're going to be on the podcast on the 10th to talk about this. So they hired CO. They took on Jason as the client because they have a contract with Medicaid.
Okay.
So Medicaid pays them for the clients, right? Care. So the way that it works is that Jason comes on as a client, and then CO comes on as a caregiver. But then she assigns CO to Jason because she's already caregiving anyway, 24/7. So now CO's getting paid for doing what she's already been doing all the time anyway. And they don't have to send some new person. They don't have to send anybody else. And it offsets a lot of the cost of trying to take care of somebody who's disabled, who cannot work and cannot bring income in, you know, and all they have is like the disability stuff. So I think that's fantastic, no matter how much it is. So I'm going to be a big advocate for that. So I'm your girl if you need me to, do some advocacy with that. But they are going to talk about that next week when they come in and about how they match the clients with the people. So family caregivers who get paid can earn around $12 to $20 an hour, or approximately $3,572 monthly. I don't know how they came up with that math, but if there's a way to do that, and you can do that, do it, okay? Depending on the program type, the location, I'm sure the location, and other factors. And this is as of October of 2024. So if you're caregiving or you know somebody who's caregiving, it is so worth your while to get yourself in communication with somebody who is an agency like this lady next door who provides, and there's so many of them, who provides the caregivers and pays them, like you know, Aging Gracefully and all those people, and ask them how you can get paid to be a caregiver for your spouse, your partner, your child, your whoever, and then you just become an employee of theirs and you get paid. So, anyway, any questions about any of that?
Yeah, no.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I think that's great. You should. You should. So family caregiving means helping a loved one, you know, who needs extra help with daily tasks. We talked about that last week. This person may be chronically ill, disabled, or elderly. While it can be rewarding, it can also be draining. So thankfully, some states and programs provide caregiver compensation. That's what we're talking about. The baseball people are at it. So if you hear that, that's what you're hearing. But the exact amount varies widely. So how much do family members get paid? We talked about that. I think that it can probably go anywhere from 12 to 20. I don't know how much CO is getting, but we are in South Carolina. So we don't know.
But I don't think $20 an hour is that bad.
It's not.
It's really pretty good for
it
here.
It really does help
Yeah,
on
it
top of
helps.
everything.
Yeah, I think so. So taking care of a family member means, you wear many hats. Just ensure that your loved one is okay. You might remind them to take their medications, schedule doctor visits, all of that kind of stuff. That might be all you have to do for the rest of their life. We don't know. But just be prepared and have your resources in place in case it gets worse. If they're older and not feeling well, you can also help with bathing, dressing, and cooking. But some of the caregivers that get paid can do that, come in to do that. So you don't have to, a lot of physical tasks, right?
Mm-hmm.
and my God, are they hitting the wall or are they hitting, what the hell?
It could be. Yeah.
He hit a home run. That's what he did.
All right. So, I think we're gonna leave it at that for tonight, and then next time we'll get into the rest of the stuff, which is like the importance of family caregiving. That's a big one. So we'll talk about that one next time. We'll talk about the factors that influence payment for family caregivers. That's an important one. We'll talk a little bit more about the durable power of attorney. That's an important one to have. I have one of those. That really helps make important decisions that need to be made. Separating your finances, should you, shouldn't you? We'll talk about that a little bit. Providing a standard of care, because I think that's real important. It's one thing to say you're a caregiver. It's another thing to have a standard of care in which you're saying you're a caregiver at, right?
Yeah.
So sitting down watching TV for 12 hours with somebody while you eat chips and they're not eating.
Come on now. Yeah.
That's not, and you're not moving their legs, and you're not like, no, that's not the same as the standard of care has to be the standard of care. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the challenges and limitation. So we'll talk about that some more next week. But for now, in the show notes, we're going to have all the resources. We're going to have a resource list. We're going to have all of the references that you guys can refer to. And then, of course, as always, you can reach out and ask us questions. We're always here to try to help you figure it out and navigate. And if we don't know, we will direct you to somebody else who might. Right, guys?
That's right.
All right, you guys, thanks for listening. And I'm so glad Kiki got to join us.
Yeah. Look at that. You did a great job.
Yeah, Kiki just came to talk about a counseling internship, and here she is on the
Already
podcast.
on the pod, yep.
It's just like Ariana was. Anyway, and thank you, Aunt.
Yeah, I was here for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's nice to have you here.
Hi, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Make sure you take care of your mental health. Good night. Thanks for listening to the X Podcast with me, Xiomara Sosa, clinical mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor here in South Carolina. We hope you enjoy our real conversations about all things related to mental health. You can check out our show notes for reference, resources, and other show-related information. If you found value in our conversation, we encourage you to join us weekly as we discuss different mental health topics. You can head over to the X Podcast website at www.studiotalkpodcast.net and send us a message from there, as well as sign up for our newsletter. Our email address is studiotalkmentalhealth@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast and leave us a rating and review at blueberry.com/studiotalkmentalhealth. And send us a text or call us at area code 843-695-9974. Please recommend our podcast to your friends, colleagues, family, and networks. Thanks for supporting us.